So it's been about a month since I've been working on the new Apple Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra chip. How's it all going? Well, I'm going to share that with you, but more importantly, we're going to have a little fun. We hear about all the speed benefits of the new Mac Studio, but what will it take to make the new Mac Studio with an M1 Ultra chip sweat? Yes, I'm going to load up a mixed project with as much as I can to see what it takes to choke that Mac Studio. That's what I got going on today. Why don't you join me? So yes, it's been a month since I've been working on the new Apple Mac Studio. It was a big migration from my old 2013 Mac Pro trash can. In fact, if you missed it, I did a full migration video. I'll put a link in the description, and that's where I talked about, moving from that old Mac to the new Mac Studio, setting up all my peripherals. I've got, dock controllers, keyboard controllers, audio interfaces, software, plugins. I talk about how that went and what I did and how I set it all up, including some of the problems that I had. So with this video, I want to follow up on that and talk about how it's been going, and do I feel that it was worth the trip? That's really the big question everyone wants to know. Is the new Mac Studio worth it? Now, I'm not into all those Geekbench benchmarks and all that stuff. We're audio guys. We just want to see the computer in action. So I'm going to build a project, and we're going to go stacks on stacks, tracks on tracks, plugins, virtual instruments, and see what it takes to choke this new Mac Studio. And along the way, I'm going to share my thoughts on the system itself, and I also read all of your questions on the last video, so we'll cover off some of that as well. Lots to cover today. Let's get started. So we're going to build up this project here in Logic. I got a little bit of a head start here. I'll walk you through it in a second, but we're going to just start building it up. I'm going to copy tracks using different virtual instruments. I'm going to record some bass and guitar. I'll duplicate them. I'll throw reverbs, throw all kinds of stuff in there, and just see how many tracks it takes to choke this Mac Studio. Now, something I want to clarify, and I do want to include some questions that you guys had from the last migration video, but the term migration, there's a tool within your Mac that allows you to migrate your old hard drive. So basically it moves everything from your old hard drive to your new hard drive in your new machine, and that'll move over your installs and things like that. Now, a lot of you guys are probably coming from a really old Mac. I mean, mine was a 2013. We're talking 9 years ago when I was on Mojave, so that's ancient. And some of you guys are on even older, those older Mac Pros. Now, what I did is I didn't use the migration tool, and I want to clarify this because I've got a bunch of questions about that, is that I ran both machines side by side, and I slowly did fresh installs on the new Mac Studio, and I kept the old computer alive, so I had them both hooked up to my main monitor here. I started moving over the peripherals, and then obviously installing different software, plugins, and things like that. If you are on an older Mac, I wouldn't recommend trying the migration tool. Do a fresh install. Don't bring across your clutter and your problems from your old machines. If you can keep it alive, your old machine alive in parallel with your new machine, this way, if you've got some critical projects on the go that you just can't just shut down, you can still access the old machine. I understand licensing and things like that might be an issue, but I found that the best way. If you're going to migrate, you're going to have some downtime anyways, but this way, you're not shutting it off completely. Mine is actually still sitting in my utility room here. I've set it up with its own monitor, and there's a couple of small things that I still need to access over there. I'm probably in there maybe once or twice a week now, and it took me about 5 to 7 days to get fully moved over to the new Mac Studio. And as it is, I'm still installing plugins as I discover I need them, and that's a trick with plugins is just put in the ones you know that you need, and then from there just install them as you need them. I flushed out a lot of plugins. I'll talk about plugins in a second because Waves was an issue, but we'll get to that in a second. All right, so let's get stacking, shall we? So I've been thinking about this, and the way I'm going to do this is I could easily overload every track with all kinds of, CPU intensive plugins, and I don't know if that will serve any function. So I've set this project up. I've bussed to my reverb. So we've got a reverb for keys, a reverb for guitars, and for drums. So I'm not going to be duplicating reverbs on reverbs on reverbs. I mean, I don't know what that will really show us. So this way we sort of have a realistic project here. Now we're just going to replicate tracks. So if I replicate a drum track, it'll simply be bussed to the same reverb. And I think that's a fair way to assess this. And let's see how many tracks we can stack here in Logic on the M1 Ultra chip. All right, so let's duplicate some drummer tracks here. And then I'll copy the same track into each one. So we're up to about 19 tracks. I think we got a ways to go, hopefully. So I've got a MIDI track here. This is also a drummer using the Easy Drummer plugin. Actually, Easy Drummer 3 just came out at the time of this video. So let's duplicate a bunch of these. And let's start with this bass guitar here, and let's duplicate a few of those. All right, we're up to 41 tracks and not a hiccup yet. Let's do a few more of these guitar tracks here. Well, we're up to 51 tracks so far, and we haven't even seen a single hiccup yet. So, you know what? On my old machine, I was getting the system overload errors about 6 tracks in, so already this is a luxury. By the way, there's a question that I saw in the comments on the last video, and someone asked about latency, that he felt that there was some latency related specifically to the M1 Ultra chip, which is not applicable to the M1 Max. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I use a Thunderbolt 2 interface here, and as I showed you in my last video, I use the Thunderbolt 2 to 3 adapter, and it's actually Thunderbolt 4 on the Mac Studio, which is compatible with Thunderbolt 3. I had real serious latency issues on my last machine, and it's actually been a dream because there's a low latency mode that I had to use when recording tracks. So far I haven't had to do that yet here on the new computer. So Ultra chip, latency has not been an issue, and that's a major problem that I had on my last machine, so I'm really, really happy about that.
During my initial migration, I had 2 major issues that I've now got solutions for. Most of my Waves plugins are version 9 and 10, and Wave Central version 13 said these plugins are not compatible with Monterey. However, I tried using the offline installer method, which creates an installer you can run outside of Wave Central. Most of the plugins installed, but a few didn't, while some needed to be manually authenticated. I have been able to use Waves plugins, but non-M1 compliant plugins can cause occasional crashes, so do beware of that if you try this. And Avid. Why is Avid always slow in qualifying OS updates? This is the case with Pro Tools and on the video side with Media Composer. Well, I decided not to wait and officially made the jump to Davinci Resolve. You know what? I wish I did it sooner. Pay once and free updates for life and an amazing support community. I'm not looking back.
So we're at 51 tracks. Let's keep going. So I got these clean guitar tracks here. Let's do a few more of each. All right, so these virtual instruments, that's always a bit of a CPU hog. So let's start with this one over here. We'll add a few of those. Oh, did we just reach our limit here? What are we at right now? We're at 91 tracks. It just said no. So we're at 91 tracks now, and it looks like it's starting to struggle right now. 91 tracks, not bad.
It was at this point that I realized that my screen capture software was utilizing system resources, so I turned that off and I was able to push this project to 105 tracks.
Wait, hold on. I forgot something really important. The buffer size, it was set to 128, so I changed that to 1024. And a little trick that I would do on my old Mac when I was getting these overload errors was turn off the inputs on all of the audio tracks. So I did that, and I've now pushed this project up to 140 tracks. Yeah, that's when it finally said no more. Admittedly, it's a little bit unstable now, but you know what? I'll never need 140 tracks in one project. I'm not doing symphonies, but I don't even think I'll need half of that. So 140 tracks, depending on how you manage your projects, how many plugins you use, and the type of instruments and things like that.
I think we got a lot of juice in here to take care of some really big projects. So I got to say, I'm pretty impressed with that. What do I have to compare it to? Well, certainly not my old machine. Anyways, I've done the test, but what do I really think of the Mac Studio? Was it worth the trip? Let's find out.
So really the big question that everyone wants to know, especially in the audio community or the audio production community, was it worth it? You know, is the Mac Studio really worth the dollars that they're charging for it? Because it's not cheap. But if you follow Apple and the products that they've been releasing over the last number of years, you notice that that price point at the Pro level has changed. As soon as they released those Mac Pros in 2019, I mean, they were 6 years overdue, and they came out and basically delivered everything that had been missing in the Apple lineup, except for the fact that they charge a hell of a lot more money for it than they did in the past, basically creating that upper echelon exclusive community. And I'm really glad that I didn't invest in it because I really wanted to, but I couldn't justify the expenditure. I was looking at a minimum $10,000 once I had everything inside that I wanted. And look, only about 3 short years later, we're onto a new chip, and those machines are going to be, well, maybe not obsolete, but certainly they're not going to be the latest and greatest. They're burning out a lot faster, let's just say that. So in comes the Mac Studio, which is really that middle tier desktop solution that's been missing in Apple's lineup, and something that I've been saying for a long time that they needed, and there it was. So someone working in video, someone working in audio, is it worth it? Now, I'm going to say right off the top, I've been using a 2013 Mac Pro, and I was excited when I got it because it was the solution I needed at the time. But I quickly burned out that machine. I just started feeling like it was inadequate. And there was a little bit of upgrades I could do. You could update the RAM. The hard drive, it was a proprietary SSD. There was some proprietary adapter. And even though there are kits to update it, my Apple guy told me just be careful. He's seen some machines bricked when people try and upgrade those internal hard drives. And I was really sucking wind. I only had 256 gigabyte hard drive, so that was a real problem for me. So in comes the Mac Studio. Basically, it gives me the bandwidth, the CPU power, the GPU power, everything that I've been lacking in this old Mac Pro. And really, if you think about it, this is the Mac Pro Trash Can 2022. It just looks a little different, but it's a sealed unit. And this is something, if you are into Apple products or you're in the Apple ecosystem, that you just have to come to grips with. If you want to have that computer where you can switch out components, you're going to have to shell out a lot of money, because I know new Mac Pros are coming soon, and they're probably going to be priced similar to the old ones. I mean, I don't have any insight to that, but I think it's clear looking at what they're charging for the Mac Studio. And I needed to move forward. I just couldn't work any longer on my old machine. I needed a new one, and the Mac Studio came out and just offered everything I needed. Now, I'm pretty certain about 4 or 5 years from now, I'm probably going to be complaining about this same machine. And I've just decided if I'm going to use Apple products, that's just the way it is. There's just no alternatives. I'm not ready to go to PC. I don't want to go that route. So what choices do I have? This is the middle tier desktop solution. This is it. I mean, Apple surprises us all the time, but we know that there's a Mac Pro coming, and I don't suspect there's going to be anything major in that middle category that's going to offer all the expandability that we desire. So with that out of the way, if you're willing to accept it, for today, it's a great machine. It solved all of my pressing issues today. I can use multiple applications at a time. I wasn't able to do that on the old machine. I've got the speed. I mean, just things like rendering video, for example. I'll do one of my YouTube episodes, and on my old machine, it took like 20 minutes to render out that show. On this new box, it's a minute and a half. And sometimes I screw up and I have to do it 2 or 3 times. So I'll tell you, just the speed benefit has been probably giving me back at least an hour a day, at least. Sometimes maybe more, sort of the rendering that I do in between, all the processing and stuff like that. So, and just the fact that the machine is a lot faster. It's not crashing like the old one does. So it's possible that I've gained back close to 2 hours a day of productivity. And that's something I desperately need. And I think if you're doing this as your profession, there's no expandability on this machine. Everything you're going to do to expand it is going to be external. I got a dock, so I expanded all the ports on the machine. I can't change the video card. I can't change the RAM. I can't change the hard drive. Some people are working on that, but officially, Apple doesn't want us inside that machine. So if you buy the Mac Studio, configure it for today, and maybe if you can push it a little further just so you have some runway, I think that'll give you a good 4 or 5, maybe more than that. It certainly should work well for maybe more than 5 years. But I think by that point, there's going to be all kinds of new stuff coming from Apple, and we may feel that we're left behind again, and the new technology is just leaving us in the shadows. So, but you know what? We can't make decisions for 5 years from now, not when it comes to computers. So with all of that factored in, I'm really happy with the purchase because I've got a modern system. I'm working efficiently. Things are a lot faster here. And what can I say? It wasn't a cheap box, but I have all the things that I've been lacking for the last couple of years. So in that sense, it's worth it, but you got to come to grips with the reality that this is just what Apple is doing. And if you don't like it, well, you can go check out those other guys on the PC side. That's up to you. Well, if you did like this video, perhaps you can click the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. If you want to do a deeper dive with me, I am on Patreon. I've got affiliate links. I've even got merch. All of that is in the description. It helps the channel, and I really appreciate that. But the most important thing is to check out another video. I've got one waiting for you right here. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. I look forward to seeing you again in another video.